the meantime is walking back a pair of interviews he gave suggesting he's considering making major personnel changes to his campaign staff. Here's what he told the Associated Press.
About everything. I mean, everything's on the table. We're constantly looking at everything, looking to see if there are ways to improve things, you know, if there are personnel changes that need to be made. You know, I recognize that nothing is perfect. Everything is on the table. Okay. Every single thing.
Everything is on the table, he said. He went on to tell the Washington Post the same thing, saying every job is on the table, but then walked it back, saying he has 100% confidence, in his words, in his current team, and that they're just streamlining some staff assignments. I want to turn now to NBC's Hallie Jackson. So give us a sense, is this really a walking back? Is it that there's a little bit of a disconnect here within the campaign? Because we've been hearing about that as well.
Right. It feels like there is a disconnect, Erica, especially when you look at the back and forth that's been going on among some of his top advisors in the last 24 hours. Campaign manager Barry Bennett, another longtime advisor, Armstrong Williams. Looks like there may be a little bit of a power struggle there. But as we heard from Dr. Carson, as you read, he says he has 100% confidence in his senior staff. His senior staff isn't going anywhere. So that is what we'll have to see happens after the holidays. Maybe we come out as we get into January, heading into Iowa. You might see that shake up as Carson, as he says, streamlines that staff operation and tries to reallocate assets in order to try to make this final push for Iowa, a place where he was up big a couple of months ago, and now he's down in maybe the third or fourth place position.
And that is obviously could make things tough within a campaign. How is the money issue for the Carson campaign? Is it an issue?
They raise a lot. They were the big fundraisers, the big winners in the third quarter. They also spend a lot, and they spend it fast. So that is a question that a lot of folks have had as they're looking at the Carson campaign and what's called the burn rate of how quickly they're going through their money. The Carson campaign would say that, obviously, in order to make money, you got to spend money. In order to get Dr. Carson's message out there, you got to spend some money. But we'll see how that shakes out, especially as we get into the end of the fourth quarter here in just a couple of days.
He's not he wants to create chaos. He's the chaos candidate, and just imagine him as president in a press conference. There has to be a level of decorum to win. It's not a sign of strength to insult people with profanity. It's not a serious thing.
So there we have Jeb Bush yesterday in New Hampshire taking aim squarely at Donald Trump over his comments about Hillary Clinton, his style basically in general. And we've seen in recent weeks, Bush has been the attack dog going after Trump on the issues and his rhetoric. But 2015, it's been a pretty tough year for his campaign. As NBC's First Read team points out, Bush and his allies have spent a whopping $38 million in ads since September, more than twice as much as the nearest competition, yet Bush's numbers have only declined. I want to bring in now Scott Pruitt. He's the Attorney General for Oklahoma and a Jeb Bush supporter. Good to have you with me, sir.
Hello, Thomas. How are you?
I'm doing great. And as we talk about what's working, what's not working, we know that TV ads, they're not moving the needle for Bush, and he's mired near the bottom of the polls. What do you think he needs to do to break through? Because the political paradigm is upside down.
Well, I think it's more than media purchasing that's going on, Thomas. I think when you look at what Governor Bush has done in both Iowa and New Hampshire, particularly New Hampshire, there is a very, very serious and very intentional ground game that's being deployed. And as you know, in Iowa and New Hampshire, retail politics, retail encounters with voters matters. And I think at the end of the day, we're basically in spring training right now for this campaign. The real votes will take place on February 1st, and the fundamentals matter at this point in the organizational prowess of the Bush campaign, both in Iowa and New Hampshire, and down ballot or downstate as well. Throughout the month of March, well, I think will matter as we go through the voting starting in March.
So do you think,
starting in February,
when we look at the forecast for 2016, and you're absolutely right about getting through Iowa and New Hampshire, is Bush being too high-minded to exist in the top tier of what is the batch of GOP candidates?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think what you see from voters from these polls, I think what's more important than who's in first and who's in second and who's in third at this point, Thomas, is what you really hear the voters saying. And what they really want is action and authenticity. And when you look at the record of Governor Bush in Florida, probably more so than anybody in the race in the last couple of decades, the conservative nature in which he led the state of Florida. 1.3 million new jobs during his time as governor, $19 trillion in tax cuts, 3 statewide voucher programs that were passed under his leadership, taking on the education establishment. You know, his record is impeccable from a content credibility perspective, and people want that in the White House. When you look at the times that we live right now, both foreign policy as well as domestically, we need serious leadership in the White House. And I think what Governor Bush is starting to say, and saying very, very eloquently, and I think very persuasively, is what we see in the bombastic nature of Mr. Trump. We need someone seriously taking that on to present real answers to voters in this very, very difficult time.
One thing that was forecast, Donald Trump talking to Jeb Bush at the last debate, saying, you know, I'm in the center, you keep moving further off the stage and soon you're going to fall off, basically. And we know that the Fox Business Channel has put together its criteria and released what will make the top tier candidates, roughly 6 on their stage. Are you concerned that Jeb Bush isn't going to make it at all, and he might need, like a Lindsey Graham, to have to drop out before even making it to Iowa?
No, I'm not. I think the campaign is solidly within that top tier of 6 nationally and in those states. And I think you're going to see, again, the fundamentals take shape. Voters, when we get closer to February 1st, are really going to start asking the question, who am I going to elect that's going to take on the issues that matter to me, both domestically and from a foreign policy perspective? The last time we put together a coalition of Arab states to take on a dictator, to address terrorist type of activity, was in the early 1990s with his dad, President Senior Bush. And we need someone to speak to that with credibility. Governor Bush has that, and I think you're going to see that over the next couple of months and in the upcoming debate.
Scott Pruitt, Oklahoma Attorney General. Sir, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Thomas.
All right, so I want to bring in now Katrina Pearson, Trump Campaign National Spokesperson. Katrina, good to have you with me.
Good to see you, Thomas.
All right, so I want to start with this tweet that we got from Donald Trump earlier today, and it was directed toward Hillary Clinton, saying the Hillary Clinton staged event yesterday was pathetic. Be careful, Hillary, as you play the war on women or women being degraded card. So, Katrina, explain to all of us, what is Trump talking about here? Is this a veiled threat?
Well, no, I think he's just pointing out the obvious. I mean, we've all seen she's struggling with women in her own campaign, and a lot of women aren't really leaning towards Hillary Clinton because we're not all perpetual victims, as the left would like everybody to think. And with this word that everyone is freaking out about today, this word was said in 1984. It was said in 2011. Mr. Trump even used it when a woman won an election. And all of a sudden, they're taking this to heart and trying to make it sound sexist or extreme in some fashion. And this is the kind of thing that fires up people who look at this and say, you know what, you're making something out of nothing.
All right, so a lot of people would say that Donald Trump, and I know that this has been one of your talking points, to say that he just responds to folks that are in the crowd. And you talked to Tamron Hall earlier today, right here on the air, saying that Trump...
He doesn't have some controlled speech that you've memorized over a 30-minute period. He's out there just talking to people, and he does engage with them on the crowd, and the microphones don't pick that part up. Now, when we go into the general, we'll be specifically focusing on one person and the issues, and trust me, there are several issues to talk about. But I really do think that after the primary, you're going to see the campaign shift more to a laser-targeted focus on Hillary Clinton, the left, and the media, because we're going to have to fight them all to succeed.
All right, so we look at the Quinnipiac poll that came out yesterday, Katrina, and you talk about, you know, what the crowds are doing. As we look at what respondents are saying in the poll, 50% would be embarrassed if Donald Trump were to be elected president. And as we look specifically at gender, it goes up to 59% among women. When does the campaign take that into account and become concerned about those numbers and how to win in Iowa, how to win in New Hampshire, if that many folks would be embarrassed to have him in the White House?
Well, I think that's also consistent with his polling, roughly around 40%. That means there's 60% that would prefer someone else at this point in time. But at the end of the day, whether you're a woman, a Democrat, or an independent, you're going to be voting on the issues, not whether or not you like somebody's usage of a language. You're going to be voting on the economy, on ISIS, on terrorism, on the best ability to lead. And in that area, Thomas, he leads hands down.
But when we look at what conservative folks, the talkers, are saying out there, they're not really a big fan of Donald Trump. That's one thing that Donald Trump likes, because he likes being an outsider. But if you want to get into policy, what's the one policy that Donald Trump is proud of, that he's presented, that he feels he can run on?
Well, I think there's two sort of combined in one, and that's the economy and immigration. Those two things go hand in hand when it comes to spending, when it comes to education, when it comes to a number of things. The economy and education are the two most important policies right now that people are more concerned about. That's why the left is upset that a lot of the working class white men are supporting Mr. Trump. It's because they want jobs. It's because they want their wages to go up. And all of that is reflective on immigration policy.
Katrina Pearson with the Trump campaign. Katrina, thanks so much. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Thomas. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. We've got Senator Ted Cruz firing back at the Washington Post. All of this because the Post published an online editorial cartoon showing the senator as Santa Claus, and there in the front, his two young daughters as monkeys. So the cartoon has been stripped from the Post's website, replaced by an editor's note about this. And this morning, we had Ted Cruz responding and clearly upset about this depiction of the cartoon.
You know, I have to admit, yesterday when I saw that cartoon,
Senator Ted Cruz firing back at the Washington Post. All of this because the Post published an online editorial cartoon showing the senator as Santa Claus, and there in the front, his two young daughters as monkeys. So the cartoon has been stripped from the Post's website, replaced by an editor's note about this. And this morning, we had Ted Cruz responding and clearly upset about this depiction of the cartoon.
you know, I have to admit,